Rampart was the capital city of the Mongolia, but actually his granddaughter translated what he told to me. What he told is so impressive. He told me everyone who are going to meet you become happy. That's what he told me. It's not to my. He is not wishing my happiness.
No.
But those,
who meet you?
Yeah, in the future.
In the future.
And he is expecting those I'm going to meet. They are all become happy. That's what he said to me. So it's a good,
wonderful thing.
It's a wonderful thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's about the musicians. Perhaps many artists and musicians, they suffer to seek further and further. It's not happiness. They don't feel happy doing it. It's always some kind of suffering and sort of self-doubt. When you are doubting yourself, then you're not happy. And yet, these people give happiness to the others. You see, when the public listens, they have, I can see from the public, they said, I feel so good. Maybe that's one way of saying I feel very happy.
Yeah.
But they go out from the concert with another dimension, and then during which time they forget about their unhappiness, their problems. They are taken to another universe, and then that gives another extremely nice energy for the public. The musician may, when they have communication with the public, they can take that as what shall I say, sharing that feeling. But come to that, the musicians suffer enormously, constantly.
But I think there's a part of what you're saying that is very relevant to many of the things we have been discussing, because you say that when we listen to music, we get out beyond ourselves. And I think actually it is this transcendence that we are looking for in many different ways, that we are transcending our own selves. Is this a non-subject? Yeah, non-self. But that is really what is happening, isn't it? That you are becoming, if not becoming beyond yourself, then you are at least able to embrace something outside of yourself, and that is giving a kind of happiness, or elation, or because you feel associated, or you feel a connection with something which is outside of you. I think that is probably very close to expressing what is happening when you are seeing art. That you understand that you are not just yourself, but you are part of a system, a whole system.
So realizing or understanding two completely different kinds of levels, then it is possible to be experiencing self-transcendence. So, as I mentioned first, understanding something and understanding how to understand, this is a beginning way to understand. There are two different ways to be becoming self-transcendence forever.
So the way to understanding doesn't need the logic?
It beyond the logic.
That's it.
So when I want to understand her, the dog, we don't need logic, language, but I can understand her feeling. Oh, she is happy now, or she is angry now.
I think it is a great point.
But I can't explain that.
is it really beyond logic? Isn't it just encompassing logic and something else?
Feeling.
I mean, you're not putting logic aside, are you?
Maybe you shouldn't putting logic aside. As you say, you have to embrace.
You have to have.
Yeah.
Saying something is meaning saying nothing. If I try to mention something, suddenly there are so many different kinds of explanations, context are required. So without saying context, it is very, very difficult to say anything.
Yeah.
So content and context are coexisting for further development.
Yeah, maybe I'm still confusing the understanding and the way of understanding. So when you said something, okay, and I understand what you said is not true or not agreeable to me, but I can easily say, I sometimes say, okay, I understand. I understand why you said so.
Yeah.
Even though it's not true or it's not agreeable to me, but I may say, okay, I understand. And at that time, I understand why. So at that time, it's not the truth or not true. The fact is not important at all. The relationship between I and you are very important. For example, I said, okay, yes, this is black. Okay, when I'm talking about something between Murase-san, and I said, okay, it's black. The same thing I put here, and I'm talking with Masako-san, and Masako-san said, oh, this is white. I may say, okay, yes, this is white. It's so relational. Or, you know, the fact is not so important at that time. And but the scientists, we are, as a scientist, we are, you know, try to find the fact or logically think. So, but we don't want to be a mere scientist. We want to beyond the science or something. We want to develop the new kind of the science, or you know. At that time, what you said, the way of understanding might be very, very important.
I think you're right. I think it has to do with that science traditionally have objective and objectivity, which means that it's truth, or maybe not truth, but it's legitimacy and its relevance and everything is without context. And maybe what you're trying to say is that it's still context dependent. So maybe that's where we are trying to go.
Yes, that's what I learned from the physician, you know, those who are studying about the physics. Physics is a very, we believe, is a very, very strict science. Okay, one or zero or true or not true, but actually it's a contextual, or what is it? In the context, it can be changed.
True or not true is completely saying dualism, but dualism is not always true in the case of quantum physics. But the same thing can be said at the level of macroscopic social psychology level. So we have to consider dualism as well as non-dualistic way of thinking. This is always a problem. On the basis of dualism, it is easy to follow logically what he says or what she says. But once a logical way of thinking is not good enough,
It's a kind of reductionism.
reduction is not always correct.
No.
No.
But
no.
you're saying that the dualistic approach to descriptions of many things is reductionist in its
Right.
way. Yeah.
So I do not think reductionism and dualism are not good enough.
No.
So we're looking for another.
Another
don't
way
know.
is,
Another- yes,
holistic
yes.
ways.
So shall we call that holistic way or something else?
So instead of defining anything first, we have to start from ambiguous way of patterns or things. Actually, Carl Jung, for instance, found collective consciousness. He exactly mentioned mind is very ambiguous. So ambiguous mind must be considered based on ambiguous situations. Science is developed on the basis of well-defined elementary things. Psychology is developed not well-defined elementary things or processes. That is a real difference between science and psychology.
As I said, I'm from engineering and medical